Hi there. The stated or unstated objective of most Gnostic systems of thought or spiritual attainment or spiritual path is the attainment of soul awareness and or self-knowledge, or both, preferably. And this is normally thought to be a precursor for attaining a state of mind and even a metaphysical entry into eternity, where the individual soul is in close proximity or even at one with God. And God is seen as a personal transcendental being, and soul is a transcendental being or state, or something approximating between those two meanings. At any rate, soul awareness leads to, or is part of, or is one with God awareness. So on this earth, the objective is soul awareness, to put it in a nutshell. Never mind what comes after, or above, or whatever. Now, this is all very well and good, and we know, however, that attaining soul awareness without distraction is extremely difficult in these worlds of the Demiurge, because distraction is one of the main features or characteristics of this world and of the worlds of the Demiurge. So obviously, reducing distraction to a minimum, or even getting rid of it temporarily, is extremely difficult to achieve. And but the idea of doing things every day, of spiritual exercises every day, is that you train your mind to achieve a non-distracted state in which soul awareness might be experienced, and gnosis might be experienced. Obviously, I say the word might because, as I say, it isn't a matter of you calling them; it's them calling you, and whoever they are, the powers that be, to put it in Joss Whedon's terms. Anyway, the idea also is that you strengthen your mind so that you are not distracted by things that happen when you're not in a state that's a precursor to soul awareness. So you meditate every day, and the idea is that you take the results of that meditation, if any, and the feelings of that meditation and the intuitions, and you apply them to your everyday life, and you sort of strengthen your ability to cope with everyday stress. So that's a sort of practical application of soul awareness, whether or not one bothers about it being a precursor to some sort of metaphysical state. So that's something that you can do, despite being a householder, despite going to a job every day and having all the stresses and strains of modern living, or even simple living, or self-sufficiency, because self-sufficiency can be quite stressful as well, I can tell you that. It's a full-time job, being self-sufficient in most things. Anyway, be that as it may, some people have also chosen to become ascetics and go into the desert and seek a minimal distraction. So a very, very simple life indeed, in which basically only the barest of necessities are attended to, and the rest of the time is spent in glorious meditation and introspection. But if you've seen Salvador Dali's painting of The Temptation of Saint Anthony, you'll know that in fact often a lack of distraction or minimal distraction can actually be a source of massive distraction, and a lot of strange things start to manifest from the mind in order to distract you, even though you're in a situation of practically non-distraction. Temptations will arise, and in fact, especially being on one's own. Often, no man is an island sort of thing, and we are social creatures, and without that, we start to get a bit wonky in the mind. Sort of the film Castaway comes to my mind anyway, and so you can actually go mad as a result of being on your own, or if you're in a sort of community of hermits, that might be quite good. But then again, all sorts of pettiness and little petty rivalries start to emerge, and so those are distraction as well. So the life of the ascetic or the hermit, or part of a collective of hermits, is by no means escapist. It's by no means a sort of an easy answer, an easy option. It's extremely difficult, actually. And very few people are even able to do it for temporarily, never mind all their lives. But just as you are strengthening your mind to not be distracted, which will lead to transcendence, the objective of the ascetic's life is to lead a life which leads to transcendence. So the sort of little arrow, one could draw an arrow from the top right-hand box there to transcendence, and from the bottom left to transcendence as well. And of course, the other thing to do, which is even cleverer, I suppose, and which you can develop an ability for as a result of doing your spiritual exercises on a daily basis in the comfort of relative stability, is the ability to jump into soul awareness even during a crisis, or even during things which are going to distract you heartily, especially a crisis, really. And of course, crises come and crises go. But if you can, count to 50 slowly, no matter what's going on within yourself and with other people, and with possibly even within the world itself, the physical world, you can jump into soul awareness, and then you can begin to, on the practical level, come to the only conclusion, which is, I am soul. I am not this crisis. I am not this reaction to this crisis. I am not this headache. I am not this anger. Cicero talked about, things that happen. We go into shock. And then we go into anger. So often people go into a crisis mode and they become very angry and agitated. But if you can think to yourself, as a result of being able to jump into soul awareness by any means, that I am not this anger. So the anger arises, okay, because you're hardwired to go into shock, as Cicero observed. If things happen that you didn't expect to happen, which is just about everything in life, really, then you can cope very well, and this could be a precursor to transcendence as well. And especially if you get good at doing this, and you count, and you get good at counting to 50 and going into breath awareness and going into the introspective silence, no matter what is going on. And but that's very, very, very difficult to attain. As I said, there is a relationship between doing your spiritual exercises when there isn't stress, and being able to build up the ability to do your spiritual exercise no matter what is going on, even if you're in a very stressful situation. And there's probably a relationship between those two. The thing is that if you're anything like me, you're far too lazy to find out that relationship, because you don't do your spiritual exercises on a regular basis. But whenever you feel like it, which is basically not a good way to train your mind, or to train anything, to train animals or your own mind, or children for that matter. You've got to be consistent. You've got to be, consistent. You've got to provide stimulus response arcs on a regular basis every day, really, to get good at something. Otherwise, you just won't make any progress. And along comes a stressful situation and just bowls you over, just knocks you down. So easy to distract people. So you can be distracted by a lack of distraction. You can be distracted, obviously, by high crisis situations. And if you don't train your mind every day to cope with this world, then you're not going to be much good if a crisis actually does pop up. because you're just going to go into rage, and all your spirituality will go out of the window. As they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, partner in through the door, sobriety out through the window. It's also very difficult being in a relationship with siblings and family members and loved ones, and a life partner, obviously. And they can provide an amazing array of stressors to actually trip you up. So there's a lot of banana skins out there which are just waiting for you to walk on them. And sometimes these things are so stressful that even if you did practice your spiritual exercises every day, when there wasn't stress, sometimes it's just you just can't cope with what's going on, and that's it basically. And of course, you are hardwired not to cope, in the sense that fight and flight hormones kick in at the slightest provocation. All you're basically doing really is giving yourself a sort of bit of a time. If you can count to 50 slowly, you're giving your brain time to calm down, and then you can look at the situation rationally and then react on a basis of reason rather than impulse, you see. But then again, some people say that impulse shouldn't be disingenuous towards impulse, because sometimes you go with your impulse and you go with your intuition, which sometimes happens like that, in a click of the fingers, and that can be the right thing to do. You go with that intuition, and you go with that that emergency thinking, as it were. And if you did sort of slow down and think about things rationally, you'll get yourself in a funk, and then you get yourself in even worse trouble. So, the point about all the spirituality is it's not escapist. It's also not a panacea for everything. And sometimes the way that we react to the lower worlds in the lower world kind of way could be the right way to react. So, so again, you can never tell which is going to be which is going to be better, either counting to 50 slowly or reacting on impulse. You can't discern between those two as options, which of course is typical of life in the finite worlds and the lower worlds. This is how it is. You can never decide what to do for the best, So some Gnostics said, "Oh, to hell with all this. I'll just go with every distraction and see where it leads me." So we come down to this box here. It's a bit like surfing. I'm just going to surf. I'm just going to take potluck on which HTML pages come up. I'm just going to go where it takes me, on the basis that some intuitive sort of power, psychic power, which actually has the sort of eye over takes a bird's eye view of everything. And if I just go with every impulse, pretty much, it will come right in the end. It's all balance out, basically. But it all might end in tears and even death, of course, and injury and harm to others. So, the Gnostics did recommend going with every impulse and just going with every distraction to see where it leads you. But of course, they did point out that this might lead to something very important, which is self-knowledge. Because when you put yourself out there, as it were, and put yourself in harm's way, and in temptation's way, and put yourself in every other way of every other thing that's going down, sometimes you can actually learn a lot about yourself over time. If you don't actually kill you, it'll make you stronger. It'll bring you into self-knowledge, and that self-knowledge could be a precursor to soul awareness, which could be a precursor to God awareness. So, know yourself is an important injunction in Western magical esoteric tradition. And you can know yourself through excess better than you can know yourself through a lack of excess. You can know yourself through indulgence better than you can know yourself through abstinence. I'm not quite sure I see that, because sometimes you can actually use your imagination and empathy to jump into the future, as it were, and then sort of think, well, if I indulge myself in this way, this consequence would arise. and I don't want that consequence. So I don't actually indulge myself on every whim, on every impulse, because my empathy and my sensitivity and my intuition propel me to a future state where things could go down, and yet I don't choose to go there. So again, you're going to count to 50 slowly before you react, or before you act on impulse or temptation, or on the principle of indulgence. So humans do have empathy, which means that you think to yourself, well, that person wouldn't like it if I did that or said that to them. You have empathy. You have imagination, you have intuition, you have sensitivity, which propels you to a possible future, which you can choose not to manifest, you see. And that's perhaps what other sentient beings can't do, other animals can't do, and humans can, which is why perhaps we're more successful as a species. Successful? Yeah, we are. We cope pretty well, given all the things that are against us, like viruses and meteorites and, and global warming and all that. Anyway, the point is that which you should go for, basically. Give up and just be distracted by everything and see where that takes you. Or basically become a monk living in the desert with other monks living in the desert. Or should you do your spiritual exercises every day so that when the chips are down, you can go into soul awareness, on the spur of the moment, on a crisis moment, you can just go there. It's very difficult. I think possibly, obviously, this all depends on your personality. Some people, I think are very fiery people. And they will probably go for, let's just go with every distraction and let's just go with myself, find out who I am through indulgence and excess, and through misadventure and mishap and everything else. Other people, and those people might say, yes, that's true, but I will also, at the same time, practice my spirituality every day, so that in a deep crisis I can jump into soul awareness, and that would take me to a place of calmness and a place where I'm beyond duality. So they live dualistic lives, but they also live spiritual lives, and this also strengthens them to deal with all the vicissitudes of life as they arrive and all the crises as they arrive. Now, some people will just want to retreat into the desert. They're just good at being on their own. They're good at coping with all the things that will arise in their minds, as in the temptation of Saint Anthony, who was a desert father, of course. And they'll cope with all these temptations and mad stuff and demons coming to them and trying to get them to be distracted. And some people sort of want to light a candle in the evening and some incense and sit down and introspect and meditate every day. And they have sort of reasonably comfortable, stress-free lives, so that they're not on a sort of they're not on a crisis mode every day, and so they are sort of more suited to a kind of watery kind of existence. Their lives are pretty stable and pretty good, really. Other people do live on a crisis, they live on an edge, and they do need to develop the ability to go into soul awareness. So you've got these 4 different personality types, if you will. And I suppose that ultimately the cute Gnostic will probably be able to go into either any mode. They will be able to go into indulgence, they'll be able to go to the desert, they'll be able to, introspect when things are not stressful, and they'll be able to go into soul awareness when things are stressful. So there'll be a bit of an all-rounder. That's what I think. I envisage a perfect Gnostic being an all-rounder and being able to sort of, cope with everything, cope with a lack of distraction, cope with mega distraction, cope with comfort, and things like that. So they just respond as needed. But the point is that they come to know themselves through all this, and they also come to be able to go into soul awareness. which is a precursor, it is thought, of God awareness, and preparing your soul to leave this vale of tears in a state which will guide the soul to the transcendental realms of the true God. And if you can do all that, then you're a better man than me, Gunga Din. That's all I can say. Because I'm not terribly good at this, I must say. I know it in theory, but practicing it, well, that's another video, isn't it, really?